Youth unemployment in South Africa takes centre stage as the country marks 45 years since the June 16, 1976 student uprising. The official unemployment rate increased from 32.5% in the fourth quarter of 2020 to 32.6% in quarter one in 2021. The rate under the expanded definition, which includes those who have given up on the hunt for a job, is now 43.2%. Youth unemployment under the expanded definition is a staggering 74.7%. Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities Maite Nkoana-Mashabane said that youth unemployment was a result of the legacy of apartheid. To discuss this further, I'm joined by development economist Funzani Mtembu and legal researcher Ngqulunga. Ngqulunga. Very good morning to you both. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Funzani, to start off with you, this is not the best time to be a young person in South Africa, is it? Funzani, can you hear me? Seem to be struggling with the Funzani. Nkanyiso, good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning, I can hear you, yes.
Fantastic. I was saying that this is not the best time to be a young person in South Africa.
Indeed. There are most of the economic measures that have been put in place by the government in South Africa has made it very hard for the young people in the country to have education and also to have employment. So if they do have education, they're most likely not to find opportunities because of the lack of growth in the country. So I think that's the lack of, the proper macroeconomic and physical consolidation in the country and the austerity measures that have been put in place since after the global financial crisis happened around the world. So I think that the staggering unemployment rate that's happening in South Africa that disproportionately affects young people. It's a time-ticking bomb for most of the young people around the country who are experiencing all these realities every day. And we've seen recently that the government has announced a few measures that there's going to be a budget cutting process that's going to undergo just because of the pandemic. All those budget cutting measures that have been put in place speaks unto the very same sluggish growth that we're witnessing in the country. So it really is a bad situation, and it's really bad to be a young person in South Africa with no possibility or prospect of having an economic activity to participate fully in the economy. So it's an indictment for the country, for the young people in the country.
Funzani, take us through some of the practical challenges that young people are facing in this job market.
I think one of the things that we need to appreciate when it comes to youth unemployment or unemployment in general, particularly in South Africa, is the fact that our unemployment is actually is structural, and that actually means that there's a mismatch of skills between unemployed and available jobs. Structural unemployment is mainly caused by changes in the economy, such as deindustrialization, which leaves some unemployed workers unable to find work in new industries with different skill requirements. And so one of the things that you would see when it comes to our GDP is that manufacturing was actually one of the industries that was predominantly contributing towards our GDP historically, but currently we are moving towards services, finance being the leading industry that contributes towards our GDP. And so the industries that are more labor intensive, such as your agriculture, construction, manufacturing, are shrinking, right? Whereas the industries that require more high-skilled individuals are the ones that are expanding. And considering that this is an emerging a country, this now then becomes a problem in that the skills do not necessarily match the available jobs in the market. And so what we know is that I think about 50 about 52.4% of the unemployed are actually people that do not necessarily have any skills. So are people that do not necessarily have matric. And so that actually means that low-skilled workers continuously become unemployed because the low-skilled industries or industries that actually hire low-skilled workers are shrinking, whereas the high-skilled industries are becoming bigger. And so one of the things that I think we need to take cognizance of is how reindustrialization, moving from one dominating industry to another dominating industry, and now going into the fourth industrial revolution, obviously technology is becoming big. And so the tech industry then requires a different set of skills. So that actually means that we may not be able to actually match the jobs that are actually out there. So one of the things that is actually affecting the youth currently is exactly that. Being part of the global market or of the global economy actually means that we are part of globalization. And so reindustrialization or deindustrialization also is inevitable in the context of South Africa. And so those are some of the kind of the economic side of what is really going on in terms of the unemployment and employment, but youth obviously being the ones that are mostly affected. And so I think that's one of the things that we need to look at. How do we reskill and how do we skill our young people to ensure that actually they are absorbed into the labor market?
Here's something that I'd like both of you to respond to, starting with you, Nkanyiso. Farmers often talk about farming being dirty work. Now, what percentage of the youth, if any, are focused on agriculture and farming? I mean, we talk about barriers to entry. This is obviously one enterprise where the barriers potentially are certainly not as high as in some other industries. Is this an option? Are young people looking at multiple options of earning a living?
Most definitely, but I don't think that government has done enough, in terms of developing policies that are geared towards encouraging young people to venture into industries like farming. Farming is a very big market in South Africa, an agricultural market. And it's also a land issue. When you're considering the land restitution program, trying to get more black people into the space of farming and agriculture. I think that over years it has become a problem for government because not much of the policies and legislation actually enables that environment for most young people to be able to go into farming. And then again, I don't think there is something that young people should actually say they just want to shift their focus only on agriculture so that for them to be able to get employment, to be able to put themselves on board. I think that it's a very dynamic issue. It's a very broad issue that it needs a much larger market for them to be able to access South Africa's economy. At this stage, as Funzani has alluded to the fact that of the technological infrastructure that's improving, there's a lot of sets of skills that are needed currently in the economy, of which we don't think that due to the lack of economic growth, obviously, and due to the lack of that progressive policies from government, I don't think it's able to enable most young people to then have an enthuse to go into the markets like going into farming or agriculture for that matter.
Funzani, my final question to you is, what can young people do outside of wait for the government?
I think one of the things that we need to do is to actually look into small to medium enterprises. Small medium enterprises are one of the ways in which we can actually ensure that there is a creation of jobs in the market. And so one of the things that young people have to look at is actually creating jobs themselves. That's one of the industries that is able to actually absorb a lot of unemployed people, but also just diversifying our skills and diversifying, not concentrating in one industry, because currently a lot of people are in the service industry, which is obviously, as I said earlier, that requires high-skilled workers, but also looking at other industries. For instance, if you look at our economy at large, Gauteng, the three provinces actually dominate our economy: Gauteng, KZN, and the Western Cape. But when you look at provinces such as the Eastern Cape, which are provinces in which agriculture can actually be extensively exploited, the Eastern Cape and Limpopo. The Eastern Cape actually came out with worst numbers in terms of unemployment. But those are places that agriculture can actually be exploited. But there is also other, opportunities within those provinces as well. So I think what needs to happen is that young people we do need to diversify our skills. There needs to be, and obviously the government has to take a role in doing so, in ensuring that the skills that are there available in the labor market are actually skills that are able to, to be diversified across industries. But obviously, I think that entrepreneurship is one of the businesses, opening businesses, small to medium enterprises, is one of the ways in which we can actually create jobs. But not forgetting that the problems that we have in this country are actually problems, that are structural problems more than anything. And so I think policies need to be reevaluated, need to be revisited in terms of what needs to be done in order to make sure that there is actually job creation. And we need to start having a developmental kind of mindset when it comes to our economy and our country, because we are not a developed country. And so ensuring that we prioritize development is very important for us to actually move forward in a progressive way.
Unemployment figures reaching the mid-70s amongst young people. That conversation, thank you very much to you both for speaking to us. We were speaking to economist Funzani Mtembu and legal researcher Nkanyiso Ngqulunga.